preliminary hearing into Charlie Kirk's assassination just finished recently, and needless to say, we have more questions now than answers, as is the case with anyone who has honestly examined this entire narrative. Establishment influencers told us they were privy to a 4K crystal clear video of Tyler taking the shot, except that video seems to not exist at all. We're being told there's never been a more clear case, like in history, akin to the case against Tyler Robinson. I want to say from the outset that I don't know who killed Charlie, and I'm no closer to knowing following the preliminary hearing. I can't see how anyone could be. Maybe there will be more evidence if and when this goes to trial, but as it stands, it doesn't appear to be clear-cut at all. What I do know is that establishment figures, including mainstream media and influencers, are referring to Tyler Robinson not as an alleged perpetrator or even a suspect in the alleged crime. They have declared him guilty before a trial has taken place. Overwhelming evidence. It's case closed. He did the deed. Last I checked, this is not how the justice system works. Now again, perhaps if and when this goes to trial, we will see some overwhelming evidence, and if it is indeed proven that he is the perpetrator, bring him to justice. Of course, throw the book at him, full extent of the law. What is odd, though, is that the theories being presented on both sides are, in fact, as it stands, still theories. Yet one side is allowed to present their theories as fact unchallenged, and the other side, the side with questions, is being labeled demonic and part of a cult and being ridiculed and literally mocked for just asking questions. I'm just asking questions. Yeah, we're asking questions and we'll continue to, by the way. The amount of errors and investigative protocols that were broken or not followed at all at this point are probably too many to count. There's plenty of experts out there who've detailed what should and shouldn't have been done. We'll direct you to them for that, but we want to address some of our outstanding questions. Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, has been covering this case extremely closely. We believe also unbiasedly. So we've decided to talk to him about this more in depth today. We'll be right back after a quick word from one of the sponsors of this show. Z Media is proud to partner with Aussie businesses that support freedom and believe in you and your family getting the best possible nutrition you can. Stockman Steaks is a third-generation family meat business supplying direct from freedom-loving Aussie farmers with pasture-raised, non-genetically modified, humanely raised local meat. Their meats are guaranteed mRNA-free. That's right, no mRNA in these grass-fed, antibiotic, hormone-free animals. By buying from Stockman Steaks, you'll be supporting Aussie farmers who share your values and are committed to giving you the best quality meat. Head to their store to see their delicious range of carefully selected meat boxes or create your own. Visit stockmansteaks.com.au/Maria. Support businesses that support us and give your family the nutrition they deserve. Clint Russell, thank you so much for coming back on. We appreciate you being here.
Pleasure as always, Maria. This is crazy world, and I'm just trying to survive along with everybody else.
Well, we have a lot to talk about today because there has never in the history of all of mankind, according to influencers, some of which were involved in the Epstein binder, never been more evidence in the history of mankind to prove that someone has done something ever in all of recorded history, nor will there ever be more evidence ever.
That's what we're being told. Tyler Robinson, he did it. He acted alone in defense of his boyfriend, and he also never talked about politics or Charlie Kirk with his boyfriend. Very, very unusual paradigm we're dealing with, and I can't tell you how disappointed I was with the TPUSA influencer brigade that went out there and said, we've got 4K HD of him pulling the trigger. It was like. And then I proved it on my show. They just lied through their teeth. Like that footage flat out does not exist. And there will be no consequences. There'll be no repercussions because ultimately, if you're closely tied to the, the regime, the Trump administration in this case, it seems like you can get away with whatever you want. It's really sad.
It's one of the most insulting things to me. I mean, there have been many insulting things, the whole way treating everyone like they're idiots for being curious.
Right.
But one of the most insulting things to me has been you are going to taint the jury pool by looking into whether or not there are holes in this story. And by the way, I'm not fully resigned, fully decided on anything. All I know is that the narrative doesn't make sense, right? And I think that's your
Right.
position as well. Whoever's guilty
Exactly.
should be found guilty and held to the fullest extent of the law, of course. But the problem is that there's just, I think there isn't enough evidence to say this is the person, and we'll go through that today. So you're tainting the jury pool if you ask questions, but you're not tainting the jury pool by going on Fox News and all these other outlets saying this is the killer for sure. We know it. We've seen it. I mean, isn't that the most insulting part?
Well, I don't know if it's the most, but it's up there for sure. I mean, you've had Posobiec going around saying, I saw a leftist shoot. I don't know if he says my friend or Charlie Kirk, and I saw the left celebrate it. And he just keeps saying that over and over again. It's like, well, that insinuates that that Tyler Robinson did this and that he is in fact a leftist. I don't know that either of those things are in fact true at this point. So that has been my plea to, not just the media apparatchiks, but also to the public is like, if you're actually interested in justice for Charlie Kirk and his family, please just reserve judgment. That's all I'm asking of you. Like, actually consider what we're up against. Consider that this is the most high profile political assassination of our lifetimes. Consider all of the circumstances, consider the missing pieces of evidence that would be necessary to have you convinced of that fact. And then just relax. Just think for yourself. You don't actually have to choose a team here unless the team that you're choosing ought to be justice. So that's been my biggest frustration. And it transfers over to two other guys that I really like, which is Viva and Barnes, Robert Barnes and Viva Fry. And, they're not as bad as Posobiec and the other TPUSA folks, but the fact that they have also become so heated with anybody that's questioning, the prosecution's narrative on this, including me at times. Viva was even going after me for it. I was just shocked by it.
Well, what I find very, very concerning is the current narrative around, and I hate that we even have to say this, but whatever people think of Candace, love her, hate her, trust her, don't trust her, I
Right.
don't really care. The woman's brought up some good points, some not so great. And that's part of the natural process of going through this. What I find alarming now is this Sandy Hook, bringing the Alex Jones Sandy Hook case up, which of course was going to set a precedent in the future for silencing speech and silencing the questioning of official narratives. And I mean, the two aren't even comparable when you look at what really happened with Alex and how many times he actually brought it up versus all the other people on the internet. I mean, we won't get into all of that, but the bringing that up as a comparison now, what Candace is doing, signals to me potential lawfare coming her way and in the direction of anyone else questioning this. So of course you and I are going to do that today. We're going to question it today.
Right. Well, and for the record, the lawfare against Candace has already began. I think Brian Harpole's already got a lawsuit against her. The Macrons got lawsuits against her. So look, she's been very successful, and I hope that she's got good attorneys, and I hope that she can actually, defend herself successfully. But yeah, anybody bringing up Sandy Hook when talking about the Charlie Kirk case, I think you should be very cautious about doing so because I think we all know what that was. I mean, it was basically the purging of the top or one of the top three dissident voices in this country. And well, I guess they didn't succeed in totally shelving Alex Jones. It certainly damaged him tremendously. His operation just got shut down. It's a tragedy, and it's obviously an infringement, not just against the First Amendment, but specifically free speech and a free press, which is what matters so much when it comes to free speech. So, I just want to be clear, though. I'm not criticizing Viva Fry for this particular topic because I don't think he was actually intending to, bring down the knives on Candace the way the knives were brought down on Alex. But I hope he also understands why people really don't like him bringing that up when talking about Candace Owens. I think people are rightfully concerned about that being the likely future for Candace. Is like I think that they're going to pull out all the stops to try and punish her for talking about this against their will.
Yeah. And again, regardless of what people think of her, I'll just give an example here. I am, in the top 10% of people who really don't like Ben Shapiro, right? Don't like his views, don't like his style, don't like his personality, and I'm just not a fan. Okay,
I'm
I
in the
would.
top 5, so
So, but I would never want lawfare to put a stop to Ben
agreed.
Shapiro having his
Yep.
voice. And
Yep.
I don't think he should be censored, and I don't think his reach should be stifled. And the free market should be able to decide what they do and don't agree with. And the fact that I see people on the right that are sort of buying into some of these tactics that have typically belonged to the quote unquote left is just, it's disgraceful. It's really disgraceful.
Yeah, well, and add to it the irony of those being the same people that call me the woke right. Like that's what they call me in my camp, oftentimes non-interventionist, libertarian, conservative leaning folks. It's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
I have never, James Lindsay, Ben Shapiro, all these guys, I have never once called for them to be censored, but they would love nothing more than to see me get banned at this point. And then Loomer, see, this is the thing. Obviously, I don't want any of these people to be censored, but there is a huge, huge problem with paid propaganda that's happening in this country.
Yep.
Huge. If anybody believes that Laura Loomer had a sincere change of heart after spending years, multiple years, just eviscerating not just Zelensky, but Ukraine and India and every other nation. She was like actually America first for a while. And then about 6 months ago, she goes on this, big trip to India, and she's basically doing this apology tour where she's getting shouted down because she said really mean things about Indian people. And then she comes back, and now 6 months later, she's doing what I think is a PR I don't know, salvage job for Zelensky as the Trump administration appears set to change course and start to provide munitions and aid to Zelensky and Ukraine once again. And I personally think that she was deployed to soften the blow to the MAGA base, to try and convince the most imbecilic of the MAGA base that still remains that, in fact, supporting the Ukraine war was MAGA all along. And it never, ever, ever was. I mean, it was explicitly not. Trump said he was going to end the war on day one. So now we're 500 plus days in, and we're going to start to add them to the sanctions bill against Iran. Or no, I'm talking about Russia. I mean, it's just egregious. It's egregious. So again, I don't want Loomer or anybody else to be censored, but I would very much like to understand how our media environment actually functions. And I don't think we will understand that until we have like hard hitting criminal laws against paid propaganda, foreign countries or domestic. I want to be clear about that too. I want to know who is being paid by the Trump administration too, because there's a lot of people that are on that payroll. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it's a big problem.
It is a big problem, and there was before we get into the sort of dismantling the narrative, I just want to say there was an influencer, a very prominent influencer last week that was like, "Wow, President Trump just promised that he's going to make sure big tech are holding, are paying for their own data center energy and building their own energy infrastructure and all of that." And a quick search, I mean, not even 30 seconds, Clint, you find the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It's not a law. It's not anything that they can be held accountable for. It's just them pledging that they're going to do this. And in there, by the way, it has the provision for, someone like BlackRock to continue buying up power infrastructure like they have been, and then giving that to the data centers and taking it from the people. So how, and these types of posts that are supposed to placate the people who are concerned about these things. And then you read some of the comments and you can tell who the real people are. And they're like, gosh, this would be really good if this was to come to fruition because our power costs have gone up so high. So it's like these naive, well-meaning people are being fiercely manipulated. And it really bugs me.
You and me both, sister. I mean, that's basically all the Trump administration is at this point, is just manipulation of like good patriotic people. And it breaks my heart. But at the same time, many of those people are furious with me because they want so desperately to believe, they want tune out all of the bad news, which is real, and tune into all of the propaganda and paid liars. And at some point, you just got to let those people go. Like you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah, feels like that point in COVID where it's like there's just some people that you just cannot
Bingo.
help, and you got to keep moving forward.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
on that
lining
note,
up for their fourth booster of MAGA juice, and I'm just like, all right, go have it.
well, let's talk to the people that are a little bit more clearly thinking. There are many, many things that I think for me don't make sense as far as the Charlie Kirk official assassination narrative, and a lot of it came sort of was embedded further for me, I guess, following what we saw in that courtroom. So what I really want to do is talk to you about what stands out to you the most thus far.
As far as good evidence or the missing evidence?
But let's talk about both.
Okay. I mean, let's start with the damning evidence, because I think oftentimes, people in my position, they try to straw man, the prosecution's case. I think the fact that, I mean, assuming this is correct, I'll just say that as a preface for everything I'm about to say, but assuming it's correct that the rifle was actually on that rooftop with Tyler Robinson's DNA, that's damning, obviously. How did his rifle get there? It doesn't mean that he fired it, but it would certainly be damning that his rifle is there at all. That would naturally lead you to believe that either he or Lance or someone had access to that rifle and framed him. So at minimum, he's either being framed or he fired the shot. I think that, if it can be proven, which it was not proven during the preliminary hearings, if it can be proven that he was in fact on campus that day, if there is cell phone data that demonstrates him, spending, I think it was 5-6 hours prior to the actual shooting in and around campus, walking around, all of that should be provable with his cell phone data. It also ought to be provable with flock cameras. It ought to be provable with, other surveillance cameras around UVU, the parking structure, the place where he parked for many hours, that should have a license plate reader. So that would, all of that, assuming that all lines up and it shows him, coming in at 7 a.m. or whatever it was, and going and getting Chick-fil-A and coming back, like all of those things, if you can actually line up that metadata, that should be very damning.
Yep. To at least prove that he was there,
Right.
and perhaps wouldn't prove that he was the one that fired the shot, but his gun was there, he was there, but
Right.
yes, so he was involved, right?
Yeah, I think that would all be very damning. Here's the problem, though. That doesn't exist as far as we know. Like, it has not been provided to the public. Sorry, I'm still trying to steel man. I didn't want to, get into the teeth of why I doubt all this. I'm just trying to think of other things. It's certainly damning that Lance Twiggs, testified saying that, Tyler had left a note saying that he did it, or that he saw an opportunity and he was going to take it. It's very damning that he says that Tyler got home and, for whatever reason, Lance didn't ask him really any questions about what he had just done. He just said, "Is it true? Is the note true?" And then they moved on with their lives. Like, it's just the most bizarre testimony ever. But anyways, if that's accurate, like if Lance Twiggs is telling the truth, Tyler Robinson's guilty. I mean, that's really as simple as it gets. Like, if Lance Twiggs is telling the truth, he's got to be guilty. If he's not telling the truth, then we've got major problems. If the cell phone data doesn't demonstrate it, we've got major problems. I should also add that, the rifle itself, the alleged murder weapon. Now I'm going to get more into the reasons I doubt all of this. The murder weapon itself, the Mauser 98, had dust in the barrel, according to testimony from one of the ballistics experts during the preliminary hearings. And my understanding of rifles, based off of using them, but also doing some research, is that if a rifle has been recently fired, you're not going to have dust. Like if he threw it in the bushes or something, maybe some like dirt granules could get into it. But she was specific. She said dust. Like, that implies lack of use. That implies a weapon that has not been fired in a long time, or at least months. So I found that absolutely fascinating. It should also be noted that there was 5 people's DNA on that rifle, which is not unusual. I mean, if a lot of people are using a rifle, there's going to be other DNA samples. So what's interesting about it is, like, the the damning aspect of it would be that Tyler Robinson had the majority of the DNA of those 5 people. He had the largest sample size. What's utterly bizarre is that while he had the most DNA on it, it being his rifle, or handed down to him from his grandfather, his DNA sample was also the most degraded, which if he was the last person to use it, which he should have been, right? It was to commit this murder. You would think it would be the opposite. His would be the most fresh, the least degraded. So there's so many oddities. And then additionally,
wasn't it that Lance Twiggs's DNA was less degraded than Tyler's?
Yes.
Was that on the gun?
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And also, I mean, his, Robinson's DNA wasn't on the trigger mechanism, but I guess he could be wearing gloves. I don't know. It's also bizarre because, like, if you're going to go there to commit an assassination and your intention is to get away with it, and you're wearing gloves to keep your DNA off of the trigger mechanism, why would you not have cleaned the whole rifle, to get your DNA off of it? And like, if you're wearing gloves, I don't know. It's very interesting to me.
I saw Baron Coleman, just going back to your previous point about if Lance Twiggs's testimony is correct. I saw Baron Coleman discussing this on Redacted, if I'm not mistaken, saying that even in that letter and in that text exchange, Tyler isn't explicitly saying, I took the shot. He's saying, I had the chance and I took it. What does that mean? Does it mean you were an accomplice? Does it mean, what does it actually mean? We don't have an explicit, I did this. And on top of that, you would think that if the parents, as we were initially told, brought him in to confess, that the prosecution, as part of that preliminary trial, would have brought that into the preliminary trial. Surely would have brought his parents to say that.
It would have been very damning if his mother sat there and said, yes, he told me he did it. So the fact that didn't happen should give everybody pause. The fact that we don't have a confession or a guilty plea from Tyler to this day, despite him turning himself in, right? Like, nobody finds that odd. And then also, the real key thing about not just Twiggs, but the entire line of messaging from allegedly Robinson to Twiggs and others is that we don't have any proof that any of it's accurate. Like, none. The note, which basically serves as a pre-confession that I saw this opportunity, I'm going to take it. It was burnt by somebody. Like, we still don't know who, but it was, there was a photo taken of it. Like, why would you take a photo of a note only to destroy it? That's utterly bizarre. And then the other confession messages are through, I believe, Discord, which Discord claims that Robinson didn't have an account with them. And according to Baron Coleman, there's a distinct possibility that those messages were sent while he was already in custody for 2 hours, around, I think it was 8 o'clock of the 10th. I think maybe it was the 11th. And it's just like, all right, so what is the smoking gun here? Like, we don't even know that we have a smoking gun. Like, I don't even know that the Mauser 98 was actually the murder weapon, or that Charlie was actually killed by that rifle, or a bullet at all, for that matter. Like, I'm still open to the possibility that there was an explosive device in the Rode microphone. We still don't have an answer as to what the glass on the floor of that SUV was. Like, what was it? I know Viva Fry and Robert Barnes get furious when people talk about this, but like, we need an answer to that. This is to my understanding, it was a rental car. You're not going to have, these shards on the floor if you just picked this vehicle up a day or two prior.
Correct.
Right? Or maybe that morning. It would be professionally cleaned. So like, something happened. Something got, these, what looks to be tempered glass shards that are on the floor of that SUV. It's a very simple question. Was that the microphone, or wasn't it? Mm-hmm. If it wasn't, okay, let's move on. But if it was, we got a real problem here.
Well, by the way, sorry, but the story could be, well, the microphone ended up in the truck and someone crushed it with their heel. Okay. But there needs to be an but I'm, unlikely, but I'm just saying, cannot fathom why someone would be frustrated at this question, because as you said, it's a recent rental car. Why would there be something that appears to be tempered glass shattered all over the floor?
Exactly. And my understanding, I've been mic'd up with devices like that in the past, doing what I do. They're hard. Like, you're not going to step on one and have it shatter like that. No way. So if that was the Rode microphone tempered glass, we got a real problem on our hands. Like at that point, we're dealing with, in my opinion, an exploding microphone. Like that's my honest opinion. I'm not saying that's what that glass was. I don't know what it was, but I would like answers to what it was. And then just to get back to the the confession messages, like, so long story short, we don't have any confession message. We don't even know that the murder weapon is his, and then we don't have any metadata that's been provided to demonstrate that his cell phone was actually being tracked, or I don't know, maybe the vehicle has navigation in it. Maybe they can track it that way. None of that data has been provided to us. We don't have any evidence that he was traveling there doing any of the things that we're being told he was doing. And then we also don't have any clear footage of him doing anything on campus. Like none. The clearest footage we got was him at a Dairy Queen. All the other footage that they claim is Tyler Robinson, I implore your audience to actually go look. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take the TPUSA influencer's word for it. Look at the footage on that day. And try and convince yourself that you can say definitively that it's Tyler Robinson.
Well, Lance Twiggs, who we're told
I can't say that,
is his partner, cannot definitively say that's Tyler.
Thank you. Exactly.
Someone who you live with. I mean, whether they're, really together or not, that's the story we've been told. Regardless, they live together. Presumably
right.
That part's correct. Someone you've lived together with for some time, you would know their walking pattern, their mannerisms, everything. Surely, even if the footage was a little bit blurry, you'd have some level of certainty. But there's none from Lance Twiggs himself.
He even says when he's being asked to look at 6 photos, like, this is how deep I am to this. I can actually recall all of this. When he's looking at the 6 photos that are still shots of, scare quotes, Tyler Robinson on campus, he says, I think it might be Tyler based off of, he has sunglasses like that. He wore those shoes. He has shoes like that, which are just like basic Converse.
Yes.
And he also says he's wearing jeans. Tyler would wear jeans. It's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Sunglasses, Converse, and jeans. He never says that's Tyler Robinson. That's the guy I sleep with every night. Like, that should be very easy. And then when he gets to the bottom 2 photos, he says those 2 look like Tyler. So like the first 4, he's basically acknowledging like that doesn't even look like Tyler to me. But then the bottom 2, he's saying, yeah, that looks like it's probably him. And it's like, all right, dude, like this is your star witness? Really?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. And I'm just set him aside because he may be a liar. He may be involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk for all we know. I just want people to actually do it themselves. Look up the photos, please. I implore you, look up the photos of Tyler Robinson on the stairs at UVU and contrast that to Tyler Robinson sitting in the courtroom or Tyler Robinson in the Dairy Queen. And it's just like, that doesn't look like the same guy. And I didn't even talk about the fact that we've got multiple outfit changes that don't seem to serve a purpose. He's just like changing his clothing left and right. Which you would expect him to do if he was like trying to get away with this thing. But like at the same time, he appears to have changed his clothing from a black shirt to a black shirt to go and dump the rifle. And then one other point, and this really bothers me tremendously. And as you've said, Barron's done incredible work on this. The footage that they have given to us, it has taken out basically everything that we would need to verify their narrative. Like they have cut and chopped almost every vital piece of evidence that you would want to look at. And I'm not exaggerating. Anybody that's been doing this research, you could watch my show, watch Barron, whatever. You can figure this out for yourself. There is, like, just think about it from this vantage point. The footage from across the parking lot that shows, scare quotes, Tyler Robinson running away after he had just pulled off the biggest assassination, right? And all you see is this blurry figure. But they cut it so that it starts right after the shots fired, and then they cut it right after he gets out to the street before you can see which direction he goes. Does he go left? Does he go right? Does he go straight? It cuts there. If he goes right, then the prosecution's narrative of him dumping the rifle behind the shed in the bushes, maybe that's viable. But the fact that they cut it ought to give you pause. It ought to make you think, okay, if you're trying to convince the public or convince the judge, you need probable cause, right? To get a jury trial here. Like this is a big deal. Why would you not show the footage of him pulling the trigger? Like if you've got, as Benny Johnson and others said, you got 4K HD trigger pulling footage, right? It wasn't shown in court, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, it wasn't. So there's something deeply awry That doesn't mean that Tyler Robinson wasn't involved. It doesn't mean that he didn't do it. It just means that this, I mean, anybody that's telling you that this is an open and shut case is a lying son of a bitch. Sorry for my language, but they are lying.
What I found interesting was the defense. And I have a few problems with the defense, to be honest with you, Clint.
Me too.
Why wouldn't the defense call the parents to say, no, he never confessed to us? Why wouldn't the defense? I mean, there are multiple things that I think the defense could have done that they didn't, which is strange to me. The whole thing is very strange from all sides, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I haven't been very critical of the defense is because, you know, my understanding is it's basically a given that there's going to be a jury trial. So you're going to want to hold back some of the most damning elements that might, you know, get your client off on these charges. So that could explain some of what they were doing. But I did have a lot of problems with them not asking, you know, the follow-up questions that I just did, basically, when I was just rattling off. Like, it does the footage of the rifle being fired exist? Is there a cleaner version of this footage that actually, like, legitimately identifies Tyler Robinson as being the gunman? Like, these are questions that I would like to have answers to.
I think if I can pause you there, Clint, I think I remember the defense asking that. I think they asked.
They did that one time, yeah.
Yeah, they asked, does footage exist of Tyler Robinson taking the shot? And the response was no.
Right. Well, I don't know. There's mixed messaging on that. I unfortunately wasn't watching the trial that day, so I don't know if the TPUSA influencer lies about that are accurate or not. But they were saying they were just asking about this particular footage. It was not about the overall footage. But then I know that TPUSA influencers lied about the last day because I did watch that. So I lean towards them probably just lying about the entire thing, and that was in fact the totality of the question being asked was like, does this footage exist, period? Does it exist, period? Not right now, not that we're going to show you this clip. Is there any violence in it? But rather, do you have footage of the rifle being fired? And if the answer is no, which I believe it is, then I mean we're relying on so much circumstantial stuff to convict. And then I didn't even mention the fact that, like, there's almost no chance that nobody in Tyler Robinson's life didn't know about this. Like, there's almost 0% chance, unless he was like MK Ultra triggered to go, you know, do it that day. It just makes no sense that this guy who, you know, according to the prosecution's narrative, he's doing it, you know, basically in defense of his lifestyle, his relationship, right? And he doesn't talk to his boyfriend about it. Like, does anyone believe that at all?
Well, the other thing that was odd about that is that Lance, and forgive me, I'm butchering this because I heard the point made by someone else. So Lance is told by Tyler in a text message exchange, do you remember the bullets I was carving into or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And Lance didn't know at the time what those carvings meant. This is a furry leftist.
Right.
And that furry leftist doesn't know what that stuff means.
Right. Well, yeah. And he also said, you know, he asked him where the Dremel was, and Twigs tells him, you know, oh, it's over there. And and then his boyfriend sits down and he's just, you know, dremeling away at his rounds of ammunition. And you never go like, according to his testimony, his only concern was that he was going to set off one of the rounds. So he told him, like, basically be careful, but he doesn't go like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you doing this, man? I don't buy any of it. And the fact that he's got limited immunity ought to bother everybody. It ought to bother Erica Kirk and Jack Posobiec and all the people that, you know, really claim, and I think were some of the closest people in Charlie Kirk's life. Like, why am I more bothered by this than you are? Shouldn't you be 10 times more pissed that it looks like Lance Twigs is lying through his teeth about, you know, big elements, probably because he's trying to cover his ass and not be, you know, at least brought down with Tyler, assuming that Tyler was actually the gunman? I don't know. There's so many problems with it, man.
I do want to talk about Erica, TPUSA, and some of these influences and their behavior. But before we get there, just going back to those text messages that we mentioned before. So Agent Brian Davis confirmed that the investigators used the Israeli company Cellebrite to verify that the text exchange between Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs was authentic. And Cellebrite was founded in 1999 in Petah Tikva, Israel, where it is headquartered. Now, the problem with Cellebrite, there was a are the allegations, Baron Coleman asked Grok actually, are the allegations Cellebrite can alter phone data rather than just extract it? Tell me about the 2021 security analysis by Signal, Moxie, Marlinspike. And Grok actually confirmed. Moxie Marlinspike's April 2021 analysis confirmed exactly that. Cellebrite requires physical access to extract data and generates reports on a Windows machine. Specially crafted files in an app on the phone could trigger arbitrary code execution on the analysis computer. This allowed undetectably modifying reports, inserting, removing, or altering texts, photos, contacts, etc. across the current report and previous future reports from other devices with no timestamp or checksum changes. This is a huge problem.
Well, it's a huge problem. And then on top of that, like, even if it came from his device, we don't know that he sent it. Like, Twiggs is living in the same building, right? Same apartment. Why couldn't he have taken his message, taken his phone and sent those messages? I think it's impossible to say that those messages actually came from Tyler. That's my whole problem with it, is like, that's probably the most, like, it would be the most irrefutably damning evidence, is if you have a series of electronic confessions, but you cannot verify that came from Tyler. You cannot verify that those were unadulterated. I think they're worthless, honestly. So that's my position on them. I wish I could have more confidence, because I feel like that would be a real nail in the coffin to figure out who actually pulled this off. But I see no reason to actually believe the validity of those. And then on top of that, you've got, Kash Patel and the FBI, who's like, they've never, to me, in my view, satisfactorily answered, like, why was the confession letter put under the keyboard? Why was it burnt? Was it burnt by Twiggs? Because if it was burnt by Twiggs, well, then that's accessory to murder, I would think. That's a confession note, right? You're covering up for him, right?
Perhaps one of the reasons for the immunity.
Yeah, well, exactly. But see, when you have immunity, my understanding is that the only way that immunity sticks is if you tell the whole truth. They're not supposed to be giving you the immunity so that you can lie to make their case for them. Like, you're supposed to be given immunity so that you can tell the truth and basically have your guilt excused, right? But it seems to me as if he's just lying. So if he has immunity to lie, well, then you get into the Candace Owens lane of, like, maybe he's an asset. Maybe he's been flipped. Maybe he's been compromised because of some, weird sexual picadillos, based off the community he was a part of. I don't know. But I'm just saying there's reason to really doubt those communications, in my view.
Yeah, definitely. Just from this, the issues with this technology, the issues with how it can be compromised, the fact that we don't have the physical phone the feds didn't take the physical phone.
Yeah.
I don't think they even took Charlie's physical phone. And this is kind of where,
It's disturbing.
Every aspect that I look at, Clint, and again, in the pursuit of truth and justice, you want whoever did this to be found, convicted, and all of that, right? If whoever it is, yeah, all of them, every single person involved. Which, by the way, we still haven't had answers as to what about the people that were posting online that this was going to happen. Yep. What of them? None of this was looked into, And when I'm looking at all of this in its totality, I can't find a single claim that's been made by the feds, TPUSA, and all of the influencers that I can't poke holes in, right?
Right.
I can't find a single claim. Yeah.
No, exactly. I mean, I can't even definitively say that Tyler Robinson was on UVU that day. I can't say that. I wish I could. I wish that they had actually provided evidence of that, but it's like, it is tenuous at best. I mean, you've got all of these cameras running. You've got hundreds of people videoing. I didn't even bring up the fact that the first cop that finds the screwdriver on the rooftop, his body cam goes down right before he finds it. like,
Yeah.
what are the odds? And by the
And I
way,
think what was it? He was on shift for less than 2 hours, and that body, those
yeah,
cameras are supposed to have a 12-hour battery
yeah,
life.
12-hour recording capacity. He had only been on shift for 90 minutes, and his footage is only like 30 minutes because he didn't even turn it on until the shots fired. Why is your footage not rolling all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, there's a distinct possibility, given his vantage point, that had his footage been rolling, had his body cam been rolling, when, like, just prior to the, when his shift started, it would have had an incredible vantage point to that rooftop. Like, we might actually see the shot being fired, assuming that's what happened, right? So why is his body cam footage not running? I want to know that. And I want to know for sure why his body cam footage goes off, a minute or seconds before he finds this incredibly damning screwdriver on the roof with Tyler's DNA and blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but that's a huge problem. And anybody that looks at that and just goes like, you're just grasping at straws. Like, no, I'm not. I am not grasping at straws. That is a huge effing problem. And you are lying to yourself if you can't admit that. Like, his footage should have been running the whole day. Sorry. And he could have, like, that would be it would be so valuable to have, because, cop body cam footage is usually pretty high quality. It would be so valuable to have that vantage point.
By the way, if all the other evidence was airtight and that one fact was there, I would be questioning it still, right? So it's like it's not grasping at straws at all.
No.
And by the way, considering the behavior of the federal government for the past many decades, you're expected to grasp at straws also. Okay, so
well, yeah, you ought to be at this point,
right?
That's how I got my start in this world, was grasping at straws to figure out what was going on with the COVID origin story. And just FYI, I got it right. Well, a hell of a lot of people were telling me I was crazy. So, take it for what it's worth. That doesn't mean I'm right about this. I'm not even making an affirmative claim here. I'm literally just saying the prosecution's case is lacking based off of the evidence that they've provided to the public. It is weak. Like, I'm like dead serious. I think he may not be convicted. Like, I honestly believe that at this point, unless they've got some secret, nukes like Iran, which also doesn't have a nuclear program. But anyways, unless they have some secret weapons that they've been sitting back on, I'd be surprised if a jury looks at all this and convicts Tyler Robinson. I really would. And, if he just to be clear too, if Tyler Robinson, not only if he's the lone shooter, but if he was involved at all, I want him to go to prison forever. Okay. Like, I want to be very, very explicit about that. There's this constant lie being pushed about, myself and Barron and Candace and whoever else. I'm sure you get it too. That we're trying to, let Tyler Robinson walk free. No, I want the guilty to go to prison forever, and I want the innocent to walk free.
Yep.
And if Tyler Robinson isn't innocent, I want him to go to prison forever. I would be very clear about that. But it's weak. This case is weak so far. And I really pray that the defense forces the prosecution to make this case ironclad. I want to be convinced. Please convince me. If this kid gets convicted based off of what we've seen so far, I will personally be in the JFK, MLK, RFK mode. I will never believe the story. I will never be convinced that he actually acted alone. So I'm begging. I don't want to live in that future where, half the country feels as if we didn't get justice in this case. For the sake of Charlie Kirk, for the sake of his family, but also for the sake of our country. We cannot have high profile, political assassinations that go unanswered. It already happened with Butler, Pennsylvania, in my opinion. I'll never believe that kid, pulled off that attack on his own. Sorry. And I feel the same way about this. I do.
Yeah, and Trump's interest in Butler, or lack thereof, has been interesting. I perceived him to have a lack thereof in interest in Charlie, his friend, as well. Less than 48 hours later, you're being asked about this, and you say, "Have you seen my new ballroom?" That to me was shocking.
Disgusting.
And people can make all the excuses that they want. Oh, this is how he's dealing with it. Okay, he's in a position where he could be focused on real things, real problems for Americans. Charlie being assassinated is one of them. He doesn't seem to be interested in any of those things. So, other than war with Iran. So which was it you who posted, correct me if I'm wrong, that Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the Iran war? Was that from you that I saw, or someone
Oh
else?
no.
No?
That's a great line, but I don't think it was me.
Yeah, it is a great line. And it's true. So we
Yeah.
know how Charlie felt about this. I think that it would have been exceedingly problematic for the establishment having his voice out there talking to youth who are already dissatisfied with all of this. The problem is, Clint, and I can't quite figure it out because it's almost like they thought that TPUSA could continue and totally have different positions to what Charlie's was. Charlie would have been for regime change, even though he was staunchly against it. Charlie would have been against Thomas Massey, even though he was his favorite congressman. I mean, just completely stomping on his legacy, actually, just treading on it, in my view.
Yeah.
But let me just ask you, actually,
Sure.
say what you want, and then I'm going to ask you. Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, while we were talking about the trial itself, the reason I didn't bring up, Charlie's shifting opinion about Israel is because that was not at all part of the trial.
Right.
We're just talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the trial. But like once you've come to the conclusion that there's more to this story than Tyler Robinson did it, he acted alone, that's it, right? Well, then you ought to be looking into additional angles for motives, other participants, which is what myself and so many others have been doing. And it's just irrefutable. It is absolutely irrefutable that of any intelligence agency on Earth, there is one that had a real motive to see Charlie Kirk taken out. Like, that is the Mossad. Like, that's just a fact. It also happens to be the intelligence agency that is the most famous and most proficient at high-level political assassinations. And they do it all over the world. And they do it both in secret and in the open. Like in Lebanon against Hezbollah, they did the pager attacks, but they also do it in secret with poisonings and all sorts of things, right? So, again, people say, oh, you're a lunatic. My good buddy Ian Carroll got dunked on because he said it like the day after. He was jumping right to it.
I know a lot of people who were, Clint, privately. I know a lot of people who that was their initial thought.
That's the other thing is that, yeah, and that's why I don't give Ian a hard time about it, because it's like once you've been studying how Israel functions, like, yeah, there's a lot of reason to have that be your first suspect, right? Political assassination. Who should be your first suspect? It literally doesn't matter where on earth it happens. Your first suspect ought to be Israel. And then you come to the conclusion that, like, oh, his private disposition about Israel was way more toxic than he was demonstrating publicly. And I might add, he was demonstrating it publicly in a way that he had never done before on a major, on major platforms, going on PBD and talking about an October 7th stand down order, going on his own show and talking about his Israel donors are responsible for mass migration. I mean, he was saying shit you're just not supposed to say. Like, if you're getting tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of Zionist donor bucks, you are not supposed to talk about any of that. And he was basically telling them to shove it, not basically, explicitly. And then those messages that Candace released last week show that, like, back in 2023, I think it was 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2023. He's like, I'm telling them all to,
shove it.
I don't shove it. Yeah, shove it. Okay. It's like, dude. And that was right after he did that PBD October 7th thing. And I think that all ties together. That's almost certainly what he was being attacked for. And then he was defending himself and he's describing them as the tribe. I mean, he's saying shit that, like, he's not supposed to be saying. So I just think there's a hell of a lot of reason to believe that he was, this is going to be offensive to big Charlie Kirk fans, but it's just my honest opinion. I think that Charlie Kirk was a mouthpiece and a face to what amounts to essentially an intel operation or a mass influence operation. And he was supposed to be a puppet. He wasn't supposed to be a real boy. And as he grew in notoriety and popularity and capacity and his ability to speak publicly, he started to become a really compelling public figure, one that some people thought had, presidential aspirations down the road. And it's just like, it gives me the same energy of seeing Donald Trump, neoing in the Matrix, the attack in Butler, Pennsylvania, is like, oh, you think you're a real boy? Let us remind you, you're not. And I feel like with Trump, either they missed or they intentionally missed and it was an accident. I don't know which. And with Charlie, they didn't miss. And that's my suspicion. Can I prove it? No. But there's a lot of reason to feel that way. And anybody telling the millions of us that agree with what I'm saying right now that we're all crazy, I just don't think you've actually researched this enough. I think if you were to actually research it, you would understand fully why so many of us feel as if that's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it takes as much research as you've done to feel that way. What
Sure.
what I think is happening is and I've described this phenomenon before, Clint, but the whole having to wake people up again like we did during COVID. It sounds, stupid, and I've said it so much, but it really is true, because this psyop that was pulled off, whether Trump was part of it or not, or flipped later or whatever, I don't know. We can debate that separately.
Yeah.
But the psyop that was pulled off to make people believe this was going to be different, there was going to be real change, and then just sucking all these people through rhetoric and empty promises into, into a state of complacency where we watch an actually increasing technocracy far worse than we saw during COVID.
It's horrifying.
And it is horrifying. And so seeing that whole thing, and what's happened is, because of that hope that people had, I think it's very hard for them to realize they were fooled, they were lied to. At what point the fooling happened, I don't know. Again, separate debate, but very hard for people to face the music on that. And perhaps that's why they're going with the official narrative. Watching Kash Patel for years talk about how we're going to take down the deep state and Epstein's so important, and Bongino and all these people, and then they go in, there is nothing more to see here. I promise you, I would have told you otherwise. And it's like, how do you reconcile that as a genuine person who can't handle too much horrible stuff? How do you reconcile that in your mind? I think people find it hard.
No, you absolutely nailed the psychology for why so many people are refusing to accept this. And I think it's actually deeply understandable. Like, I have real sympathy for that, because, I was a Sally come lately, very tepid Trump supporter one time for 1 week just before the 2024 election, but like, some of these people dedicated a decade of their life to it. So it was very easy, and I was also very clear-eyed as to what I was likely to get from the Trump administration. I even said in my announcement that I was going to be voting for him that, like, the downside of a Trump, round two is war with Iran. And we got it. So, I told my audience from jump, like, that was the risk. But for a lot of these people, as I was saying, they spent a decade plus dedicating their lives to this and feeling hopeful for the first time in, maybe their entire lives. So, and then also you got to understand too, what I'm actually claiming or insinuating, if this is all an op, if Charlie Kirk was eliminated by intel agencies, foreign or domestic, if it was foreign, first off, I would say if it was foreign, it's almost certainly Israel, but they would have to have domestic cooperation. They would have to. That means that Kash Patel is in the know. That means that Donald Trump is in the know. So for them, it is like, I do not blame them for just saying he was their friend. There's no way. Clint, you have to be wrong. I can't live in that world where, the MAGA faithful, the swamp destroyers are so much the swamp that they would cover up the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I have real reason to wonder if that's exactly what happened.
Well, I would just say to that camp,
it's just hard for people,
because I have them I see them in my comments sometimes, and I would just say to that camp, I don't hate you. First and foremost, guys, I don't hate you. I'm not attacking you personally. I know this is like a religion for so many people, but but it's you and I and Clint have absolutely no idea how much pressure exists for these people once they're in. You acknowledge there's a swamp. You don't know what that swamp. Maybe they're holding, them hostage in their kitchens all day, every day, until they make enough press releases that satisfies the swamp, and then and then that's it. Then they can live a little bit more free. We have no idea really of what goes on to pressure these people to become the swamp if they weren't before.
And I mean, just listen to Thomas Massey's retelling of his, congressional career. The pressure is extraordinary. And it's like, it's always plata or plomo, you know, it's always silver or lead. Like that's how they roll. You can get rich being a scumbag and selling out your constituency, or you can lose your career because we'll throw dozens of millions of dollars to a primary challenger and we'll create AI ads and we'll lie through our teeth and the president will tweet out 25 times saying what a scumbag you are. Or, and this is the option that where, you know, you got to get your tinfoil out, or they'll kill you. Sorry. Like, we're talking about the largest government in the history of the world, the largest total dollar amount spending entity that has ever existed in the universe, as best, you know, as much as best we would know. Do you think that people aren't willing to murder for access to that? Like, the answer is so obviously yes. People kill for, you know,
much less
a pack of cigarettes. So if you think people won't kill to have control over a $7 trillion annual spending bonanza, you're just naive. Sorry. Like, obviously anything is within the realm of possibility. And that goes all the way up to murder and assassinations and sex trafficking operations to get compromise on people. I mean, it's dark necessarily because the state is so immense, because there's so much capital at risk. And until you change that paradigm, until you shrink the size of the state, just expect it to get worse. It is not going to get better. It'll get dramatically worse. It'll become more and more overt. You will have more and more political assassinations that are more and more obvious. I don't know if you can be more obvious than the Charlie Kirk. I guess you could be. So it's that's why we got to shrink the state, but no one can do that either. So
this is what I wanted to talk to you about briefly. The TPUSA behavior. To me, as someone who sees right through all of this, rationally, no emotion attached, just looking at this logically, I'm like, they almost seem like they want to be obvious and make people hate them. Like, they almost seem like, yeah, we're the villains and you're going to know it. To me, that's how it seems. I wonder whether you see it that way, or whether they think they're running a really great PR campaign, even though it's like so bad. And have we moved to this era of, yes, we're the villains and there's nothing you can do about it?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, from the TPUSA side, I think it's very easy for them to lie to themselves, you know, assuming that they weren't involved with it, which I have no idea if they were or they weren't. But I don't think that they've been forthright, and that bothers me to no end. But I think it's very easy, assuming that they are innocent in all this, I think it's very easy to understand how they can convince themselves that they are doing the right thing, that they are obfuscating, you know, different shifting opinions about Charlie Kirk, because it ultimately hurts TPUSA, and TPUSA is his legacy. So we are defending TPUSA to defend Charlie Kirk. I think that's how you would rationalize behaving in a otherwise shitty way, in my view. But I don't think it changes the fact that, like, you aren't honoring Charlie Kirk's legacy by lying about what he actually believed.
Yep.
And you are lying about what he actually believed. And that is crystal clear to anybody who's actually paid attention to this. You are lying through your teeth. And then some of you are actually going out and lying to convict a man with evidence that doesn't exist. And that is, there's just no way on earth Charlie Kirk, of all people, would support that. I had lots of differences of opinion with Charlie Kirk, but he always struck me as honorable. He always struck me as a justice first, God first person. And that, for that reason alone, I could respect him. For that reason alone, to this day, I feel duty bound to make sure he receives justice. Agreed. And I don't know how you sleep at night not pursuing this the same way I am. Like, I don't know how. This is your friend. This is your brother. Like, makes me sick.
The way I see it, there have been some points that they've raised about Candace that I might agree with, right? Like, some of their points. Yes. And I wish that they were making those same points about the official narrative, that they were going as aggressively after the official narrative as they were after Charlie's friend, who's trying to get to the bottom of this. I can't fathom this.
I can't tell you how big of a point that is, and people sleep on it. But, like, if they're all so upset at the, you know, the occasionally off the beaten path avenues of investigation that Candace Owens takes. Well, here's a brilliant idea, TPUSA, the guy's running Charlie Kirk show. How about you do it the right way? How about you beat down every lead and hammer every door until you get answers to all of the questions that all of them, anybody that's been paying attention to the story has about this story. Like, you guys could be doing it the right way. You don't have to be sitting on the sideline shaming Candace or Barron or Ian or me or whoever. You could actually be doing it the right way. Just do it. But you're not. So you left the void. Don't get mad at us for filling it. Like, I want them to be, they ought to be more committed to justice on this case than I am. They ought to be, but they are not. And that should bother everybody. So, and just to get back to the overarching point I was making about TPUSA is that I think because the donations have continued to flood in, because there are so many people who are, just good-hearted, Christian evangelicals, some of them Zionists, they just feel bad. It's just like, oh, look at this widow and her kids and Charlie and da-da-da. So I think that because they raked in so much money, that organization just exploded in terms of money after his passing. I think that it's very easy for them to all become very, very cloistered, very career driven, very we have to defend this. This is our golden goose. But I just want to emphasize to them, you're not defending it. You're destroying it. All of the money that you've made over the past 10 months, it's going to evaporate. None of you have the charisma of Charlie. None of you are functioning from first principles in a way that's compelling or inspirational or truthful. I just think that, if you want to defend his legacy, the way you defend his legacy is to tell the fucking truth, and you're not doing it.
Couldn't agree more, Clint. I couldn't
Sorry,
agree more.
I try not to cuss so much, but
No,
it was necessary.
I agree with you 100%, and it's really disturbed me. All of the gymnastics that are going on. This is demonic, but when we do it, it isn't. This is evil, but when we do the exact same thing, it isn't. The double standards, the hypocrisy. Right. This is something that infuriates me. It's something that I got a lot of backlash for initially when I started criticizing Trump, which was very early on. RFK Jr., I was very disappointed very early on. People were like, come on, you're being ridiculous. You need to give them a break, so on and so forth. It's like, no, I've been doing political analysis way too long. I can spot early warning signs. And by the way, it's your job to hold your government accountable. And if you don't do it now, and if you give them time and then they don't achieve the results, you're too far in. Oh, guess what? We're coming up to the midterms, lame duck presidency, and you've achieved nothing, right?
They're already saying that.
Of course they are. So it's for some reason, people still don't understand this stuff. Emotions are high, sports teams, whatever. Okay, fine. But I just see this pattern, and that's why I asked you what I did about, the governments all over the world are just like, we are this, and there's nothing you can do about it. We're going to stick flock cameras in your face. We're going to, and TPUSA, to me, it feels like they've adopted the same sort of behavior.
Yeah, apologies. I went on such a long rant. I totally forgot the opening salvo question. Look, I can't answer that because I don't know for sure what the truth is of who killed Charlie Kirk. There's a distinct possibility that these people suspect much of what you and I do, and they're scared to death. That's a possibility. So I feel like it would be overly mean of me to just be like, no, you guys are actually, you just basically embrace the dark side. Maybe you're scared to death. I would be scared to death if I was in their position. So that's a possibility, but setting TPUSA aside and just talking about government more broadly, I think you're exactly right. I think that they are functioning in the propaganda. This is the downside of propaganda failing, is that once there are other avenues for, truthful information, the propaganda starts to not function because you need to get majority support in your country to carry out a bunch of things that are ultimately not to the benefit of the American people. The war in Iran, for instance, or lockdowns, right? So now that the propaganda isn't functioning at its fever pitch like it did back in the 60s or 70s when you only had 3 nightly news programs and it was very easy to just buy off or compromise those news stations. Now you're
it's cheaper now with influencers. They cost much less. But anyway, on.
No, it's cheaper, but there's just a hell of a lot of us out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to try and control a ton of people, even though you can do it for, next to nothing financially. At some point, there is a small fraction of the population that just isn't purchasable. And that's a big problem, because like if you have 3 nightly news programs, well, then you just have to buy off those 3. And if one of them refuses, well, you just get him fired. Like it's very easy. You can control the entirety of the narrative. That doesn't exist anymore. Now, granted, you're right. I'd say probably 80% or more of the highest level influencers out there are bought and paid for. They're controlled. But there's still 20% out there that are a real fucking problem. So once that propaganda fails, then the state has to stop with the soft selling, and the selling becomes forced. It becomes forceful. And I think that's where we're entering. And that's exactly why not just the flock cameras, but also the Axon cameras, which the Trump family is actually invested in.
Of course
they are.
Yes.
Yeah, they are creating the panopticon cage, by which, once we've actually woken up to what we're up against, it'll be inescapable. Or at least that's the idea. I'm not at all convinced that that'll be the inevitable conclusion. I try to remind people of that because, the Whitney Webbs of the world get people very, very, very depressed and black-pilled. But I do agree with her. Like, it's very important that people understand that is the direction that they're headed. So it's incumbent upon us to do everything in our power to prevent that inevitability.
So, as a closing statement for people that, and look, most of our viewers are pretty switched on, Clint. It's just the nature of, we're upfront with people. We don't lie and tell people everything's great when it's clearly not. But for anyone who's still sort of feeling a bit of cognitive dissonance here, or, wondering, is it really as bad as some people out there are saying? I would say yes, especially where surveillance state agenda 2030-esque stuff is concerned,
Scary.
right?
Yep.
And I think people need to be very involved in protecting their local communities, and also preparing outside of the system while battling within. This has kind of been my advice for a long time, but certainly much more now. What would you say to people who still aren't sure that things may be as bad as people like me are saying?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd say that your advice was great. So I'm not going to repeat it. Do what she just said. Vitally important. But as far as like convincing people, honestly, I feel like if you live through the COVID era, like you were locked in your house. I mean, I don't know if you were, I was in California, but a huge percentage of the country for a time was like totally shut down. And not just America, the world, based off of are we on YouTube? Can I say this? I think I can still say it. I'll just say it. Screw it. You can cut it if you need to. A bioweapon that was created after DARPA rejected it because Anthony Fauci outsourced it after Obama made it illegal. And they ran it through, ultimately Wuhan Institute of Virology, but it was EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak that were actually, running that chain through Fauci. And it began in, I'm blanking on the college, but under Ralph Barrick, UNC Chapel Hill, in America. This was bioweapons research happening in America. And that virus was ran through a communist country and then released somehow, intentionally or otherwise, and created a pandemic which killed millions of people. And then you were forced to get a vaccine that didn't work and may injure you to continue to work. I mean, you just lived through a Orwell novel. So do I have to convince you that maybe I'm right about Charlie Kirk? I shouldn't have to. You just lived through an Orwell novel. We're in dangerous times, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know. That's my sales pitch. If you haven't been convinced after the COVID era, I don't know what more it'll take. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree. And, for anyone who sort of woke up during that time and thought everything was okay after, and by the way, I know people in that camp personally, like not online, and I feel for them. I really do, because they're decent people who are just, they are very naive. If you're one of those people, dig deeper, please. The time is really running out. And
it was only 6 years ago. It's funny because a lot of people that did wake up to it, they still talk about it as if it was like ancient memory. It's like 6 years? Like that's ancient too? I don't know, like 9/11 still is seared in my brain.
Yeah.
If the lockdowns aren't seared in yours, I think you're just like, this is like trauma response, honestly. I think that a lot of people have like decided to forget about it because it was so painful and so upsetting. But I think it's
I
really
understand
important
not wanting to relive that all the time. I get that.
Oh, of
but
course,
but
of course.
to forget what the government is capable of, every government
the
around the
point.
world
Yep.
in lockstep,
Yeah.
that's like super naive and really like you've been lobotomized or something. Like you can't. What are you doing? You
No,
know?
I couldn't say it any better. Absolutely. But yes, I agree. Like, I'm not saying you should harp on it, you know, despite the fact that the name of my show is Liberty Lockdown. I don't talk about the lockdowns hardly at all anymore, obviously, because it's not the most pressing issue, but like it should still be a foundational, you know, I don't know, developmental tool for your worldview. You should understand what we're up against because of that. Like that's such a big example. And it should also be noted that it was a bipartisan example. Trump administration was involved, the Biden administration, you know, Democrats and Republicans, right? They were almost all totally in lockstep on that. And it wasn't just bipartisan in America. It was like global bipartisanship. It makes no sense. We still don't have real answers as to how that came to pass. I guess actually tomorrow, I think is Rand Paul skewering Fauci once again. At this point, I'm just so disgusted with the whole system. I feel like there's just no chance that anyone's ever actually going to get justice for this. But I pray I'll be proven wrong on that. I really do.
There are a lot of other people other than Fauci, so I'd like to see some of them gone after. You know, for people who think, well, Trump was fooled or during that time, whatever, the Trump admin just handed Pfizer another 1.24 billion in COVID vaccine contracts for the rest of this year and financial year 2027, including hundreds of millions specifically for pediatric doses for children. So there's, you know, if there was any fooling, there isn't any more. It's about the money. And, you know, it's sickening to me. Clint, what I appreciate so much about you is that you're really balanced, very, very fair. I find you to be very fair, and I encourage people to watch your channel. So if you're not subscribed to Liberty Lockdown on YouTube yet, make sure to do that. Liberty Lockdown on YouTube. And you can also follow Clint on X at Liberty Lock Pod. Anything else you want to plug there, Clint?
No, that's it in terms of plugs. Just make sure you subscribe to this show as well. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you. The New World Order has openly declared war on the free people of the world, and now they're telling us to expect catastrophic cyber attacks over the next 2 years. Weather events, no power, grids down, mobile cell services out. Contact your loved ones anywhere, anytime with the satellite phone store. The Bivy is a revolutionary GPS-based device which allows you to send SMS messages via your phone even if you have no mobile or cell service. Galileo will ensure you always stay in contact with Z Media, other trusted information sources, and your loved ones that can update you in real time in the event of an emergency. Don't be caught out and unprepared for the unprecedented times we are living in. Stay 10 steps ahead through secure, encrypted communication. Visit sat123.com/Maria and prepare yourself and your loved ones now.